Ladies and gentlemen, today we journey back in time, far beyond the founding of the United States, past the rise and fall of ancient civilizations, and into a world that existed 10,000 years ago. This was a time before cities, before written history, and before the land was divided by borders. Instead, it was a time of vast, untamed wilderness populated by mighty beasts and resilient human tribes, the Ice Age landscape. 10,000 years ago, the land we now call the United States was a vastly different place, shaped by the immense power of the last Ice Age. During this time, massive glaciers, some over a mile thick, covered much of North America, stretching from present-day Canada deep into what is now the northern United States. These massive ice sheets, such as the Laurentide ice sheet, dominated the landscape, creating an environment that was cold, harsh, and unforgiving. As these glaciers advanced and retreated over thousands of years, they carved out deep valleys, shaped mountain ranges, and formed some of the most iconic geographical features that still exist today. The Great Lakes, for example, were carved by the movement of these ice sheets, filling with meltwater as the ice receded. These lakes, which today serve as vital freshwater sources and economic hubs, owe their very existence to the glacial activity of the past. The Ice Age climate was much colder than today, and as a result, vast tundras and open plains stretched across the landscape. Thick ice sheets prevented forests from growing in many areas, leaving large regions covered in grasses and shrubs that supported a diverse array of Ice Age megafauna. In contrast, the southern parts of what is now the U.S. had more temperate climates, allowing forests to thrive. These different environments played a critical role in shaping the migration patterns of both animals and early humans. As the climate began to warm around 10,000 years ago, the glaciers began to retreat, drastically transforming the environment. Rivers swelled with glacial meltwater, carving new pathways through the land. The Mississippi River, one of the most important waterways in the U.S. today, was shaped by this process, becoming a lifeline for countless species and, later, human civilizations. The receding ice also left behind rich, fertile soil in many regions, which would eventually support early agriculture and allow future civilizations to flourish. However, this warming also led to significant ecological disruptions. As the ice melted, sea levels rose, dramatically altering coastlines. Land that was once connected became separated by water, reshaping the geography of the continent. One of the most significant changes was the submersion of the Bering Land Bridge, a vast strip of land that once connected Asia and North America. This land bridge had allowed early human populations to migrate into the Americas, but as it disappeared beneath rising seas, it permanently severed the connection between the two continents. The melting ice also led to dramatic shifts in ecosystems. Large grasslands replaced the once frozen tundras, and forests expanded northward. This, in turn, affected animal populations, as species that had thrived in colder climates struggled to adapt to the changing world. The mighty woolly mammoth, once abundant across North America, found its habitat shrinking as warmer temperatures altered the landscape. In summary, the Ice Age landscape of what is now the United States was a world of extremes. Towering glaciers, vast open plains, and dynamic changes that shaped the future of the continent. The retreat of the ice set the stage for the world we know today, carving out rivers, shaping coastlines, and creating fertile lands that would eventually support human civilization. Understanding this past helps us appreciate the powerful natural forces that have shaped the land long before modern history began. Early human presence. Long before the United States existed, before cities, nations, or even written history, people had already been living on this land for thousands of years. These early inhabitants, the ancestors of today's Native American tribes, were resilient, resourceful, and deeply connected to the natural world. Their presence in North America dates back at least 15,000 years, and possibly even earlier, as they migrated from Asia across the Bering Land Bridge, a vast strip of land that once connected Siberia to Alaska during the Ice Age. By 10,000 years ago, these early humans had spread across the continent, adapting to a wide variety of landscapes, from the icy tundras of the north to the dense forests of the east and the arid deserts of the southwest. These people, often referred to as paleoindians, were highly skilled hunters and gatherers, relying on their deep understanding of the environment to survive in a constantly changing world. One of the most defining aspects of their way of life was their ability to hunt large Ice Age animals, or megafauna. Using finely crafted stone tools, they hunted creatures like woolly mammoths, mastodons, and giant bison. Their most famous tool, the Clovis point, was a carefully crafted spear tip made from flint or other types of stone, designed to penetrate the thick hides of these massive beasts. Archaeological discoveries of Clovis points across North America provide strong evidence of early human activity and suggest that these people were highly mobile, following migrating herds for food. But hunting alone did not sustain these ancient people. They were also expert foragers, gathering a wide range of plants, nuts, and berries to supplement their diet. They knew which plants could be eaten, which had medicinal properties, and which could be used to create tools, clothing, or shelter. This knowledge was passed down through generations, forming the foundation of survival strategies that would be used for thousands of years. Early humans also adapted their way of life to the specific regions where they lived. In the Great Plains, groups relied heavily on large game hunting, moving in small bands to track animals across vast distances. In the woodlands of the East, early inhabitants took advantage of abundant rivers and forests, fishing and gathering wild plants. In the deserts of the Southwest, people learned to thrive in arid conditions, using caves and rock shelters for protection from the harsh sun. Despite their mobility, early humans also created strong communities, forming deep social bonds that helped them survive. They likely shared responsibilities such as hunting, food preparation, and childcare, with knowledge and skills passed down orally from one generation to the next. These early societies were not just focused on survival. They had rich cultures expressed through art, rituals, and possibly even early spiritual beliefs. Evidence of ancient rock art, carvings, and burial sites suggests that these people had complex social structures and traditions that connected them to their environment and each other. Another fascinating aspect of early human life was their adaptability. As the climate changed and Ice Age animals disappeared, these people did not vanish, they evolved. They shifted their hunting strategies, relied more on fishing and gathering, and eventually began experimenting with the cultivation of plants. These adaptations paved the way for the later development of agriculture, permanent settlements, and more advanced societies. By 10,000 years ago, the first chapters of human history in North America had already been written. These early people had explored vast territories, survived extreme conditions, and built the foundation of cultures that would continue to evolve over millennia. Their legacy lives on in the descendants of Native American tribes today, whose traditions, knowledge, and connection to the land trace back to these ancient pioneers, the megafauna giants. 10,000 years ago, North America was home to a breathtaking array of massive and powerful creatures, many of which are now extinct. These animals, known as megafauna, roamed the forests, plains, and icy tundras of the continent, dominating the ecosystems of the time. From towering mammoths and mastodons to terrifying saber-toothed cats and giant ground sloths, these creatures shaped the landscape and the lives of early humans in profound ways. One most famous megafauna of this era was the woolly mammoth, Mammothus primigenius. Standing up to 13 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as 12,000 pounds, these elephant-like giants were covered in thick fur, an adaptation that helped them survive the frigid temperatures of the Ice Age. Mammoths roamed in large herds across the tundra and grasslands, using their massive curved tusks to clear snow and reach vegetation. Their close relatives, the mastodons, Mammoth americanum, were also large elephant-like creatures but had straighter tusks and were more adapted to forested environments. Both species were vital to the ecosystems they inhabited, helping to shape the landscape by trampling vegetation and dispersing seeds. But mammoths and mastodons were not the only giants of this time. The North American giant ground sloth, Megalonyx jeffersonii, was another astonishing Ice Age creature. Unlike modern tree-dwelling sloths, these ground sloths were enormous, some reaching up to 10 feet in length and weighing over 2,000 pounds. They had long, powerful claws that allowed them to pull down tree branches to eat leaves, and their thick, shaggy fur helped protect them from the cold. These slow-moving herbivores were among the largest land mammals of their time and had few natural predators, until humans arrived. Another terrifying predator of the Ice Age was the saber-toothed cat, Smilodon fatalis. This fearsome predator was built for strength and power, with muscular forelimbs and long, dagger-like canine teeth that could grow up to 11 inches long. Unlike modern big cats, which rely on suffocating their prey, Smilodon likely used its massive fangs to deliver a powerful bite to the throat or soft underbelly of its prey. It primarily hunted large herbivores like bison, young mammoths, and giant ground sloths. Fossil evidence from the La Brea tar pits in California shows that these predators were highly social, possibly hunting in packs like modern lions. The Ice Age was also home to massive bison antiquus, which were 25% larger than modern bison and played a crucial role in shaping the North American grasslands. These massive creatures were preyed upon by both human hunters and Ice Age predators, and their descendants would later become one of the most important animals to Native American cultures. Other remarkable creatures of this time included the American lion, Panthera atrox, which was one of the largest big cats ever to live, even bigger than modern lions, and a short-faced bear, Arctodus simus, a massive bear that stood over 12 feet tall, went on its hind legs, and was one of the most powerful carnivores of its time. Unlike modern bears, which are built for endurance, the short-faced bear had long legs that suggest it was a fast and aggressive predator, capable of chasing down prey over open landscapes. These incredible creatures were not just passive inhabitants of the Ice Age world. They actively shaped their environments. Mammoths and mastodons helped maintain grasslands by preventing forests from taking over open spaces, while large predators controlled herbivore populations and maintained the balance of ecosystems. The presence of these megafauna influenced the migration and hunting strategies of early human populations, who relied on them for food, tools, and clothing. However, by 10,000 years ago, many of these giants were on the brink of extinction. A combination of climate change and human activity led to the decline of megafauna across North America. As the Ice Age ended and temperatures warmed, the vast grasslands and tundras that these animals depended on began to shrink, replaced by forests and wetlands. At the same time, early human hunters, armed with advanced stone tools and cooperative hunting techniques, became highly efficient at hunting these massive creatures. The overhunting of key species, combined with a rapidly changing environment, contributed to the extinction of many of North America's most iconic prehistoric giants. Despite their disappearance, the megafauna of the Ice Age left a lasting impact on the land. Their bones, fossils, and ancient hunting sites provide us with a glimpse into a lost world, one filled with creatures both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Their extinction marked the end of an era, but their legacy continues to shape our understanding of the deep history of North America, Clovis culture, and their tools. Among the earliest known human cultures in North America, the Clovis people stand out as one of the most significant and mysterious groups. Named after Clovis, New Mexico, where their distinctive stone tools were first discovered in the 1930s, the Clovis culture thrived roughly 13,000 to 10,000 years ago. These early Americans were among the first known hunter-gatherers in the continent, and their advanced tool-making skills set them apart. Their most iconic invention, the Clovis point, revolutionized hunting and survival in the harsh Ice Age environment. The Clovis point was a finely crafted stone spearhead, typically made from flint, chert, or obsidian. What made it unique was its fluted design, a central groove running along both sides, which allowed the point to be securely attached to a wooden or bone shaft. This innovation made Clovis spears more durable, aerodynamic, and lethal, giving hunters a significant advantage when pursuing large prey like mammoths, mastodons, and bison. These weapons could be thrown with force using a spear-throwing tool called an atlatl, increasing the range and power of their attacks. The widespread discovery of Clovis points across North America suggests that the Clovis people were highly mobile and well-adapted to various environments. Sites containing these tools have been found from the Great Plains to the eastern forests and as far south as Mexico. This suggests that Clovis groups moved frequently, likely following migrating herds of megafauna. Their ability to adapt to different terrains, from cold tundras to temperate forests, demonstrates their resilience and ingenuity. But the Clovis culture was about more than just hunting. These early people crafted a variety of tools to aid in their daily lives, including scrapers for processing animal hides, knives for butchering meat, and awls for puncturing leather and making clothing. The survival of Clovis people depended not just on their hunting prowess, but also on their ability to use every part of an animal. Bones were shaped into needles, antlers were used to create tools, and hides were tanned for clothing and shelter. Despite their technological advancements, the Clovis culture mysteriously disappeared around 10,000 years ago. The reasons for their decline remain a topic of debate among archaeologists and historians. One theory is that the extinction of megafauna, possibly due to overhunting or climate change, forced Clovis groups to change their way of life. Without their primary food sources, they may have split into smaller groups, adapting to new environments and evolving into later Native American cultures. Another theory suggests that Clovis people face competition from other human groups migrating into North America. Evidence from some archaeological sites suggests that there may have been pre-Clovis cultures, challenging the idea that Clovis people were the first inhabitants of the continent. If true, this would reshape our understanding of early human migration and settlement in the Americas. The discovery of Clovis tools and sites remains one of the most significant breakthroughs in American archaeology. Each new find provides a deeper understanding of these early people, their way of life, and their impact on the prehistoric landscape. Though the Clovis culture vanished, their legacy lives on in the descendants of Native American tribes, whose ancestors carried forward the traditions of adaptation, survival, and craftsmanship that began thousands of years ago to a changing climate. Around 10,000 years ago, the world was undergoing one of the most dramatic climatic shifts in history. The end of the last ice age brought rising temperatures, melting glaciers, and shifting ecosystems that transformed the landscape of North America. These environmental changes profoundly affected both the wildlife and the early human populations that depended on them, forcing adaptations that would shape the future of human civilization. For thousands of years, much of North America had been dominated by massive ice sheets, some over a mile thick. These glaciers had sculpted the land, carving out valleys, redirecting rivers, and creating features like the Great Lakes. However, as the global climate warmed, these ice sheets began to retreat. The melting ice released enormous amounts of fresh water into rivers and oceans, causing sea levels to rise dramatically. This reshaped coastlines submerged land bridges like Beringia and created new bodies of water while altering the flow of major rivers like the Mississippi, Missouri, and Colorado. One of the most significant consequences of this warming period was the transformation of ecosystems. The vast grasslands and tundras that had once stretched across North America began to shrink, replaced by expanding forests in many areas. These changes had a domino effect on the wildlife that had thrived in Ice Age conditions. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, and other megafauna that had adapted to cold climates now faced dwindling food supplies and shrinking habitats. Some species, like the woolly mammoth, retreated northward in search of suitable environments, while others, unable to adapt quickly enough, went extinct. For early human populations, this shift posed both challenges and opportunities. For thousands of years, people had relied on large Ice Age animals for food, clothing, and tools. With the decline and eventual extinction of many of these species, humans were forced to diversify their survival strategies. Instead of focusing primarily on big game hunting, they turned to smaller animals like deer, rabbits, and fish. They also began relying more on foraging, gathering a wider variety of plants, nuts, and seeds that thrived in the warming climate. Another major adaptation was the early development of agriculture. As temperatures stabilized and growing seasons became longer, some human groups began experimenting with planting and cultivating edible plants. Though full-scale farming was still thousands of years away, this period marked the beginnings of domestication for plants like squash, sunflowers, and wild grains. This shift toward food production would eventually lead to the rise of permanent settlements and more complex societies. Water sources also changed during this time. Melting glaciers contributed to the formation of lakes, rivers, and wetlands, which provided new habitats for fish, birds, and aquatic plants. Many early human groups adapted by becoming more reliant on fishing and freshwater resources. They built simple boats, developed better fishing tools, and created seasonal camps near rivers and lakes to take advantage of the changing environment. However, the transition was not without its difficulties. Rising sea levels and shifting weather patterns created unpredictable environmental conditions. Periods of drought, intense storms, and floods likely disrupted human migration patterns, forcing groups to relocate in search of more stable food and water sources. This uncertainty led to innovation, as early humans learned to track seasonal changes, predict weather patterns, and adjust their strategies for survival. The end of the Ice Age also marked the beginning of new cultural traditions and technologies. As different regions of North America developed distinct climates and landscapes, early human groups adapted in unique ways, leading to the emergence of regional cultures. Some groups specialized in fishing along the coasts, while others became expert foragers in dense forests or hunters in the plains. These adaptations laid the foundation for the diverse indigenous cultures that would continue to evolve over the millennia. Ultimately, the changing climate 10,000 years ago was a turning point for both the land and the people who lived on it. It forced the extinction of some species, the adaptation of others, and the transformation of human societies. Without the challenges and opportunities presented by this climatic shift, the development of early agriculture, settlement patterns, and technological advancements might have taken a very different course: the extinction of the megafauna. Around 10,000 years ago, North America experienced one of the most significant extinction events in its history. Dozens of species of large animals, known as megafauna, vanished from the continent, marking the end of an era dominated by towering mammoths, powerful saber-toothed cats, and enormous ground sloths. These creatures had roamed the land for thousands of years, shaping ecosystems and coexisting with early humans. But as the climate changed and human activity increased, they disappeared, leaving behind only fossils, bones, and the stories passed down by indigenous cultures. One of the most famous victims of this extinction was the woolly mammoth, Mammothus primigenius. These massive, elephant-like creatures had adapted to the cold Ice Age environment, using their thick fur and layers of fat to survive in frigid temperatures. However, as the Earth warmed and their tundra habitat shrank, mammoths struggled to find enough food. Their numbers declined, and within a few thousand years, they were gone from most of North America. Only a few isolated populations survived on remote islands for several more centuries before disappearing entirely. Another lost giant was the mastodon, Mammoth americanum, a relative of the mammoth that preferred forested environments. Unlike mammoths, which grazed on grasslands, mastodons were browsers, feeding on tree branches, leaves, and shrubs. As forests changed and human hunting pressure increased, mastodons also went extinct, leaving behind massive skeletal remains that would later be unearthed by scientists. Predators, too, suffered during this extinction event. The saber-toothed cat, Smilodon fatalis, one of the most fearsome predators of the Ice Age, vanished along with its prey. With its long, dagger-like teeth and muscular body, Smilodon had been a dominant hunter of large herbivores like bison and young mammoths. But as these prey species disappeared, Smilodon found itself struggling to survive. Without an abundance of large prey to sustain them, these cats went extinct, leaving behind fossilized remains in places like the La Brea tar pits in California. The American lion, Panthera atrox, one of the largest big cats to have ever lived, also met its end during this time. These massive felines were larger than modern African lions and likely hunted bison, horses, and other Ice Age herbivores. But like Smilodon, they could not survive when their primary food sources dwindled. Other remarkable species that vanished included the giant ground sloth, Megalonyx jeffersonii, which had once roamed North America's forests and plains, and a short-faced bear, Arctodus simus, an enormous predator that could stand over 12 feet tall when on its hind legs. The Glyptodon, a car-sized relative of the armadillo with a thick, protective shell, also disappeared, along with North American camels and horses, which would later be reintroduced by Europeans thousands of years later. But why did these animals go extinct? Scientists have debated this question for decades, and while there is no single answer, most researchers point to a combination of climate change and human activity as the primary causes. The role of climate change. At the end of the Ice Age, temperatures rose, causing dramatic changes to the environment. The once vast grasslands that had supported large herbivores like mammoths and bison began to shrink as forests expanded northward. In many areas, food sources became scarcer, forcing animals to migrate or adapt to new diets. Some species, like deer and smaller bison, were able to survive, but many of the largest animals struggled to adjust to the new conditions. Rising temperatures also melted glaciers, increasing sea levels and altering the flow of rivers and lakes. This led to further disruptions in ecosystems, affecting migration patterns and reducing the availability of freshwater sources. The megafauna, which had evolved in a stable Ice Age environment, found themselves in a rapidly changing world they were not equipped to handle. The impact of human hunting. While climate change played a significant role in the extinction of megafauna, many scientists believe that early human hunters were another key factor. The arrival of humans in North America roughly 15,000 to 20,000 years ago coincided with the decline of many large species, suggesting a direct impact. Early hunter-gatherers, such as the Clovis people, were highly skilled at hunting large animals. Armed with Clovis points, finely crafted stone spearheads designed for piercing thick hides, they were capable of taking down even the largest creatures. Fossil evidence, including mammoth bones with embedded spear points and butchering marks, suggests that humans actively hunted these animals for food, clothing, and tools. Some researchers propose that early humans may have overhunted key species, pushing them to extinction. Since many Ice Age animals had no natural fear of humans, having never encountered them before, they may have been easy targets. Even a slight increase in hunting pressure could have driven populations below sustainable levels, leading to their eventual disappearance. Additionally, as human populations grew, they may have altered the environment in ways that further stressed megafauna. By burning forests, clearing land, and competing with other predators, humans indirectly contributed to the decline of large animals. The overkill hypothesis versus other theories. The idea that humans were responsible for the extinction of Ice Age megafauna is known as the overkill hypothesis, a theory first proposed in the 20th century. However, not all scientists agree with this explanation. Some argue that climate change alone was enough to cause the extinctions, while others suggest that a combination of factors, including disease, food shortages, and habitat loss, played a role. Another theory, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, suggests that a comet or asteroid struck North America around 12,800 years ago, triggering massive fires, climate disruptions, and widespread extinctions. While this theory remains controversial, some evidence suggests that a cosmic impact could have contributed to the sudden decline of megafauna. Regardless of the exact cause, the extinction of these great creatures marked the end of the Pleistocene epoch and the beginning of a new era. Their disappearance reshaped North America's ecosystems, allowing smaller, more adaptable animals to thrive. Without mammoths to graze the grasslands, forests expanded, changing the landscape permanently. The loss of large predators like Smilodon and the American lion allowed other species, such as wolves and coyotes, to rise in prominence. Though the megafauna are gone, their legacy remains. Fossils and ancient bones continue to be unearthed, providing insights into the prehistoric world. Indigenous oral traditions speak of great beasts that once roamed the land, passing down memories of creatures long extinct. Scientists continue to study these lost giants, piecing together the puzzle of their final days, the first Americans and their migration. The story of human migration into North America is one of the greatest mysteries in archaeology and anthropology. Around 10,000 years ago, the first inhabitants of the continent were already well established, having adapted to the harsh conditions of the Ice Age. But how did they arrive? Where did they come from? And how did they spread across such a vast and diverse landscape? These questions have fascinated researchers for decades, and while new discoveries continue to reshape our understanding, the journey of the first Americans remains an incredible tale of endurance, exploration, and adaptation. For much of human history, North America was uninhabited by modern humans. The ancestors of today's indigenous peoples likely originated in Siberia, a region of present-day Russia, and gradually made their way into the Americas. This migration is believed to have taken place during the last Ice Age, when massive ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere. At the time, the Bering Land Bridge, a vast expanse of dry land connecting Siberia to Alaska, provided a passage between Asia and North America. This land bridge, known as Beringia, was exposed because sea levels were much lower due to the massive amounts of water trapped in glaciers. For thousands of years, Beringia was more than just a migration route. It was home to entire populations of people and animals. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans may have lived in this region for thousands of years before moving south into the rest of the continent. The land was a mix of grasslands, tundra, and forests, teeming with Ice Age megafauna like mammoths, bison, and caribou, which provided ample food for hunter-gatherer societies. The coastal and ice-free corridor theories. For many years, archaeologists believed that once the ice sheets began to melt around 12,000 to 14,000 years ago, early humans traveled southward through an ice-free corridor, a narrow gap that opened between the Laurentide and Cordilleran ice sheets in present-day Canada. This corridor would have allowed migration into what is now the United States, Mexico, and beyond. The Clovis people, who were once thought to be the first inhabitants of North America, were believed to have traveled this route as they spread across the continent. However, more recent discoveries have challenged this theory. Some sites, like Monte Verde in Chile, suggest that humans were present in South America over 15,000 years ago, far earlier than the opening of the ice-free corridor. This has led many researchers to propose an alternative migration route, the coastal migration theory. According to this theory, early humans may have traveled along the Pacific coastline, using small boats to navigate between ice-free patches of land and islands. This would have allowed them to bypass the massive ice sheets that blocked inland routes and spread southward much more quickly than previously believed. Supporting this idea, archaeologists have discovered ancient settlements and evidence of early human activity along the Pacific coast, particularly in areas such as California, British Columbia, and Alaska. These early people likely relied on marine resources, fishing, hunting sea mammals, and gathering coastal plant for food. They may have built shelters from driftwood and animal hides, using tools crafted from bone and stone. The ocean provided a stable food source, allowing these early groups to survive and thrive in an otherwise harsh environment. The spread of the first Americans. Once humans entered North America, they spread rapidly, adapting to the diverse climates and landscapes they encountered. Some groups moved eastward into the Great Plains, where they became skilled hunters of mammoths and bison. Others traveled southward into Mexico and Central America, where they eventually developed some of the world's first agricultural societies. Still others moved into the forests, mountains, and deserts, each region shaping their way of life. By 10,000 years ago, humans had reached almost every corner of North and South America. They developed distinct cultural traditions, languages, and survival strategies suited to their environments. Some groups specialized in hunting large game, using spears and traps to take down massive animals. Others became expert foragers, gathering nuts, berries, and edible plants to supplement their diet. Over time, the diversity of these early peoples laid the foundation for the many indigenous cultures that would emerge in the Americas. The debate over earlier migrations. While the Bering Land Bridge and coastal migration theories are widely accepted, some researchers believe that humans may have reached the Americas even earlier, possibly by crossing the Atlantic from Europe or island hopping from the Pacific. These controversial theories are based on isolated archaeological finds that suggest a human presence in North America as early as 20,000 to 30,000 years ago. For example, some stone tools discovered on the east coast of the United States bear a resemblance to tools used by ancient European cultures. This has led to the Solutrean hypothesis, which suggests that early humans may have traveled across the Atlantic Ocean, following ice-covered coastlines from Europe to North America. However, this theory is widely debated, as there is little genetic evidence to support it. Similarly, some researchers have proposed that ancient humans from Asia or the Pacific Islands could have reached the Americas by traveling across open ocean, using rudimentary boats. While this idea is less mainstream, it highlights the complexity of human migration and the many possible routes people may have taken to settle the continent. Genetic evidence and ancestry. Advancements in DNA analysis have provided new insights into the origins of the first Americans. Studies of ancient remains and modern indigenous populations suggest that the earliest inhabitants of the Americas were closely related to Siberian and East Asian populations. Genetic markers indicate that a small founding population, possibly fewer than 5,000 individuals, crossed into North America and gradually spread throughout the continent. One of the most famous ancient human remains found in North America is Kennewick Man, a nearly 9,000-year-old skeleton discovered in Washington state. His DNA analysis confirmed a strong genetic connection to modern indigenous groups, reinforcing the idea that Native Americans are direct descendants of these early migrants. However, the full story of the first Americans is still unfolding. Every new discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, reshaping our understanding of how and when humans first arrived in the Americas. Whether they traveled by land, sea, or a combination of both, their journey was one of resilience, ingenuity, and adaptation. The rise of early settlements. As the Ice Age came to an end and the climate stabilized, human groups in North America began to shift from purely nomadic lifestyles to more semi-permanent and permanent settlements. This period, occurring around 10,000 years ago, marked a major turning point in human history. People began to take advantage of the changing environment, experimenting with new ways of living, which eventually led to the development of more complex societies. For thousands of years, humans had survived as hunter-gatherers, constantly moving to follow herds of animals and seasonal food sources. However, as the great megafauna disappeared and plant life flourished in the warming climate, people had to adapt their survival strategies. Many began to rely more on smaller game, fishing, and gathering a variety of nuts, seeds, and edible plants. In some regions, this gradual transition allowed early humans to stay in one place for longer periods, eventually leading to the formation of small villages and settlements. Early settlements along rivers and lakes. One of the first major factors influencing the rise of early settlements was the availability of freshwater sources. Rivers, lakes, and wetlands provided not only drinking water, but also an abundance of fish, shellfish, and plant life, making them ideal locations for early human habitation. Some of the first semi-permanent villages were built along major waterways, including the Mississippi River, the Great Lakes, and the Pacific Coast. These early settlements were often seasonal camps, where people would gather during specific times of the year to fish, hunt, or collect food. Over time, as people realized the benefits of staying in one place, they built more permanent shelters, constructed from materials like wood, reeds, and animal hides. In some areas, evidence of large cooking pits, storage areas, and even burial sites suggest that these settlements became more established, serving as the foundation for future civilizations. The role of early agriculture. Another crucial development that led to the rise of settlements was the beginnings of agriculture. While full-scale farming did not emerge in North America until several thousand years later, around 10,000 years ago, early humans began experimenting with planting and cultivating wild plants. Some of the first plants to be domesticated included squash, sunflowers, and wild grasses, which provided reliable sources of food. This shift to early agriculture meant that people no longer had to travel constantly in search of food. Instead, they could grow and store food, allowing them to stay in one place for longer periods. This encouraged population growth, as communities could support more people with stable food supplies. Over time, the knowledge of planting and harvesting spread, leading to the rise of larger and more structured societies. Technological innovations in settlements. With the development of early settlements came new technological advancements that made daily life easier and more efficient. Some of these innovations included pottery. Early humans began crafting clay pots for cooking, storing food, and carrying water. Pottery made it easier to preserve food for longer periods, reducing the need for constant hunting and gathering. Stone tools and grinding stones. The production of grinding stones allowed people to process grains, nuts, and seeds into flour, making food more digestible and expanding their diet. Fishing and trapping techniques. As people settled near water sources, they developed nets, fish traps, and harpoons to catch fish more efficiently. This provided a steady source of protein and reduced reliance on large game hunting. Shelter construction. Early settlements featured wattle and daub houses, thatched roof huts, and pit houses, which provided protection from harsh weather conditions. Some groups even built large communal structures, suggesting social organization and cooperation within their communities. Cultural and social developments. As people settled into more permanent communities, their social structures and cultural traditions became more complex. With more time to interact and share knowledge, early humans began to develop rituals, belief systems, and artistic expressions that would later define their unique cultures. Some of the evidence of this cultural growth includes burial sites and rituals. Archaeologists have found evidence of intentional burials in early settlements, suggesting that people had spiritual or religious beliefs about death and the afterlife. Some graves included personal belongings, indicating that early humans believed in honoring their dead. Cave and rock art. Some of the earliest settlements also contained cave paintings and rock carvings, which may have been used to record stories, mark territories, or communicate important events. These artworks give us insight into the daily lives, beliefs, and struggles of early human communities. Trade networks. As settlements grew, people began exchanging goods, such as stone tools, animal hides, shells, and food. These early trade systems helped strengthen connections between different groups and laid the groundwork for more advanced economies in the future. Environmental impact of early settlements. As early humans settled in one place, they also began to shape the environment around them in new ways. Unlike their nomadic ancestors, who left little trace of their presence, settled communities started to clear land for planting, build structures, and manage local resources. Some of the environmental impacts included deforestation. As people cut down trees to build shelters and fuel fires, forests in some areas began to shrink, leading to changes in local ecosystems. Soil modification. The early use of fire and land clearing to encourage plant growth may have altered soil composition, making some areas more fertile while depleting nutrients in others. Changes in animal populations. With people settling in one place and hunting specific species more frequently, some local animal populations may have declined or migrated to avoid human activity. Despite these changes, many early settlements remain deeply connected to nature, relying on sustainable practices to ensure their survival. The foundations of future civilizations. The rise of early settlements paved the way for the great civilizations that would emerge in the Americas thousands of years later. The knowledge gained from living in one place, managing food supplies, and organizing communities laid the foundation for the development of agriculture, governance, and social structures. Groups that had once lived in small seasonal camps evolved into more complex societies, leading to the rise of the first villages, towns, and eventually great cities like Cahokia in North America and Teotihuacan in Mesoamerica. These early settlements were the first step toward the advanced indigenous civilizations that would later dominate the landscape, development of early hunting and tool-making techniques. As early humans spread across North America around 10,000 years ago, they developed increasingly sophisticated methods for hunting, tool-making, and survival. With the extinction of large Ice Age megafauna, such as mammoths and mastodons, people had to adapt their hunting techniques to target smaller, faster, and more elusive animals. This shift required new weapons, strategies, and innovations in tool-making that allowed early Americans to thrive in a rapidly changing environment. For thousands of years, human survival depended on the ability to track, hunt, and kill animals for food, clothing, tools, and shelter. Early hunter-gatherer groups relied on their knowledge of animal behavior, migration patterns, and the environment to secure food. Hunting was not just a skill, but a way of life, one that required careful planning, teamwork, and mastery of weapons. The evolution of hunting weapons. As humans moved into new territories, they encountered different types of prey, ranging from large bison on the Great Plains to deer, rabbits, and birds in the forests. To successfully hunt these animals, they developed a variety of weapons and tools, each suited to a particular type of prey and hunting environment. 1. The Atlatl spear thrower. One of the most important hunting innovations of early North American societies was the Atlatl, a tool that greatly increased the speed and accuracy of spear throwing. The Atlatl acted as an extension of the human arm, allowing hunters to hurl spears with greater force and distance than they could by hand. This was a major advantage when hunting fast-moving or dangerous animals, as it allowed hunters to attack from safer distance. Archaeological evidence shows that the Atlatl was widely used across North America, particularly among groups that hunted bison, elk, and deer. The use of this weapon required great skill, and early humans likely trained from a young age to master its use. 2. The bow and arrow. Though the Atlatl remained a key weapon for thousands of years, another revolutionary hunting tool eventually emerged, the bow and arrow. This weapon allowed for even greater accuracy and efficiency, particularly when hunting smaller animals that required precise shots. The bow and arrow were lighter and easier to carry than spears, making them ideal for stealth and mobility. Arrows were often tipped with sharpened stone or bone points, designed to pierce an animal's hide and cause fatal wounds. Different tribes and cultures across North America developed unique styles of bows and arrows, refining them over generations to suit their specific hunting needs. 3. Traps and snares. While weapons like the Atlatl and bow were used for active hunting, early humans also relied on traps and snares to catch smaller animals. These passive hunting techniques allowed hunters to set traps in strategic locations and return later to check for captured prey. Some of the most common trapping methods included deadfall traps, large, heavy rocks or logs that would fall when an animal triggered a hidden mechanism. Pit traps, deep holes covered with branches and leaves, designed to capture large animals like deer or bison. Noose and snare traps, rope or sinew loops set along animal trails, designed to tighten around the neck or leg of passing animals. These methods were especially useful in forested and mountainous regions, where visibility was low and direct hunting was more difficult. Tool making, crafting the perfect hunting weapons. To create effective hunting tools, early humans needed to master stone knapping, the process of shaping rocks into sharp blades and projectile points. This skill was passed down through generations, and some individuals within communities became expert tool makers. 1. Clovis and Folsom points. One of the most famous early tool-making traditions in North America was the Clovis culture, which existed around 13,000 years ago. Clovis people created distinctive fluted spear points, known as Clovis points, which were carefully chipped from high-quality stones such as chert, flint, and obsidian. These spear points were attached to wooden shafts and used for hunting large animals, including mammoths and bison. After the extinction of mammoths, the Folsom culture emerged, developing even more refined spear points, known as Folsom points. These were thinner and more precisely crafted, designed for hunting the faster, more agile bison that had become the dominant large prey species on the Great Plains. 2. Bone and antler tools. In addition to stone tools, early humans crafted weapons and tools from bone, antler, and wood. Some of the most common included harpoons and fishhooks, used for hunting aquatic animals in rivers, lakes, and coastal areas. Needles and awls, used to sew clothing from animal hides, providing warmth and protection. Clubs and wooden spears, simple but effective weapons for close-range hunting. These materials were readily available and allowed for the creation of durable, flexible tools that complemented stone weapons. Hunting strategies and social cooperation. Hunting was not just an individual effort. It was often a group activity that required planning, teamwork, and communication. Many early human societies developed complex hunting strategies to improve their chances of success. 1. Communal hunts. In some regions, early Americans practiced large-scale communal hunting, where groups of hunters would work together to drive animals into traps or ambush locations. One well-documented example of this strategy is the buffalo jump technique, in which hunters would scare herds of bison into stampeding off a cliff where they would fall to their deaths. The carcasses could then be butchered and processed for food, clothing, and tools. 2. Camouflage and stealth. Early hunters also mastered the art of camouflage and stealth, using natural materials to blend into their environment. Some common techniques included wearing animal hides to disguise themselves from prey, moving slowly and silently to avoid startling animals, using scent masking techniques, such as rubbing themselves with dirt or animal fat to hide their human scent. 3. Hunting with dogs. Another major development in hunting was the domestication of dogs, which likely occurred thousands of years before humans arrived in North America. Early humans used dogs for tracking and chasing prey over long distances, guarding food stores and settlements from scavengers, retrieving small game after it was killed. Dogs became essential companions for hunters, improving efficiency and increasing the success of hunts. The role of hunting in early societies. Hunting was not just about survival. It was deeply woven into the culture and traditions of early American societies. Many indigenous groups developed spiritual beliefs and rituals centered around hunting, often expressing gratitude to animals for providing food and resources. Some common cultural aspects of hunting included hunting ceremonies and rituals performed before or after a big hunt. Totemic beliefs, where certain animals were considered sacred or symbolic. Storytelling and oral traditions that passed down hunting knowledge from generation to generation. Hunting skills were often taught at a young age, with children learning how to track animals, craft tools, and work alongside their community in cooperative hunts. These traditions helped shape the social structure and survival strategies of early North American civilizations, spiritual beliefs, and cultural practices of early Americans. Around 10,000 years ago, the first inhabitants of North America were not just skilled hunters, gatherers, and toolmakers. They also developed rich spiritual beliefs, rituals, and cultural traditions that shaped their daily lives and connected them to the natural world. These early spiritual systems, though diverse among different groups, reflected a deep respect for nature, animals, ancestors, and the forces of life and death. Evidence from archaeological sites, oral histories, and indigenous traditions suggests that early North Americans practiced ceremonies, burials, artistic expressions, and symbolic rituals that influenced their understanding of the universe. Animism, the spiritual connection to nature. One of the most fundamental aspects of early North American spiritual beliefs was animism, the idea that all living things, natural forces, and even objects possessed a spirit or soul. Early Americans saw themselves as part of a larger, interconnected world where animals, plants, rivers, mountains, and celestial bodies were not just passive elements of nature, but powerful, spiritual entities that had their own consciousness and influence. For hunter-gatherer societies, this belief led to rituals of gratitude and respect for the animals they hunted. Many groups had traditions of offering prayers, performing dances, or even leaving small gifts before or after a hunt to honor the spirit of the animal. Some evidence suggests that early humans may have practiced ceremonial hunting, in which certain animals were believed to give themselves willingly to hunters, and in return, their spirits would be honored. Burial practices and beliefs about the afterlife. The way early Americans treated their dead provides insight into their spiritual beliefs and views on the afterlife. Archaeological discoveries have uncovered intentional burials, where individuals were placed in graves with personal belongings, food, tools, and sometimes even the remains of animals, suggesting a belief in life after death. Some early graves contained red ochre, a natural pigment often associated with ritualistic practices and symbolic meanings. The use of ochre in burials could have represented the renewal of life, spiritual protection, or a connection to the earth and ancestors. In some cases, burial sites were arranged in specific ways, possibly indicating early funerary rituals or sacred sites dedicated to honoring the deceased. Certain burial mounds and sites, such as those found in later indigenous cultures, may have roots in even earlier traditions, where ancestors were venerated as guides and protectors of the living. Shamanism and the role of spiritual leaders. Many early societies had spiritual leaders, often referred to by later cultures as shamans, medicine people, or visionaries. These individuals were believed to have special abilities to communicate with spirits, interpret dreams, heal the sick, and guide their people through rituals and ceremonies. Shamans may have used herbs, chants, drumming, and possibly even altered states of consciousness to enter the spirit world and seek guidance from ancestors, animal spirits, or other supernatural beings. Some cave paintings and rock carvings from this time period depict figures wearing animal masks or adorned with symbols, possibly representing shamans in trance-like states or mythological beings connected to their beliefs. Shamans likely played a key role in community decision-making, healing practices, and seasonal ceremonies, ensuring that their people remained in harmony with the natural and spiritual world. Rock art, petroglyphs, and symbolic expression. Throughout North America, early humans left behind cave paintings, petroglyphs, rock carvings, and pictographs, rock paintings, that serve as windows into their spiritual and cultural beliefs. These artistic expressions often depicted hunting scenes, animals, human figures, celestial symbols, and abstract patterns, which may have had deep symbolic meanings. Some rock art sites appear to have been sacred gathering places or ceremonial locations, where people would come together to perform rituals, tell stories, or seek visions. Others may have served as territorial markers, clan symbols, or spiritual messages passed down through generations. The meanings behind these ancient artworks remain mysterious, but they suggest that early North Americans had a complex worldview that blended daily survival with deeper spiritual connections to the land and cosmos. Seasonal ceremonies and rituals. Early humans closely followed the cycles of nature, marking the passage of time through seasonal ceremonies that aligned with the changing environment. These rituals were likely centered around important life events such as spring renewal and fertility rituals to honor new plant growth, migrations of animals, and the rebirth of life. harvest celebrations in late summer or early autumn, giving thanks for the abundance of food. Winter solstice ceremonies, which may have involved fire, storytelling, or prayers to ensure survival through the cold months. These seasonal traditions later evolved into more structured ceremonies among indigenous cultures, some of which continue to be practiced today. Totemism and clan symbols. Another significant spiritual practice among early North Americans may have been totemism, in which certain animals, plants, or objects were considered sacred to a family, group, or individual. Totem animals were believed to be spiritual guardians or ancestors, guiding their people in times of need. Some groups may have identified themselves through animal symbols, associating their tribe or clan with the strengths of a particular creature, such as the bravery of a bear, the wisdom of an owl, or the speed of a deer. These beliefs influenced the ways people interacted with nature, performed ceremonies, and structured their communities, reinforcing their deep respect for the living world around them. Oral traditions and the power of storytelling. With no written language, early North Americans preserved their knowledge, history, and beliefs through oral traditions, the passing down of stories, myths, and legends from generation to generation. These stories were not only meant to entertain, but also to teach moral lessons, explain natural phenomena, and preserve the wisdom of ancestors. Some oral traditions may have included creation stories that described how the world and humans came into existence, tales of heroic ancestors and great hunts that passed down survival knowledge, legends about spirits, gods, and trickster figures that taught moral lessons. Storytelling was often a communal event, performed by elders around the fire, where younger generations would learn important cultural teachings that shaped their identity. Sacred landscapes and natural landmarks. Certain locations in the natural world were likely considered sacred spaces by early Americans. Mountains, rivers, caves, and rock formations were often believed to be homes of spirits, places of power, or gateways to the spirit world. These sacred landscapes may have been pilgrimage sites where people gathered for rituals, ceremonies, or vision quests. Some archaeological sites contain evidence of offerings left at sacred locations, such as beads, carved figurines, or animal bones, which may have been placed there as gifts to the spirits. The enduring legacy of early spiritual beliefs. Even though early American societies from 10,000 years ago left no written records, their spiritual and cultural traditions formed the foundation of many indigenous belief systems that continue today. The respect for nature, ancestors, rituals, and storytelling remained central to later civilizations, shaping the customs and worldviews of diverse indigenous nations across the continent. Their spiritual practices were not just about worship. They were deeply woven into their way of life, survival, and understanding of the universe, creating a connection between people, nature, and the unseen forces that shaped their world, that a legacy that lives on. The story of North America 10,000 years ago is not just one of survival, but of innovation, adaptation, and deep spiritual connection to the land. The early inhabitants of this vast continent were not primitive wanderers. They were skilled hunters, expert toolmakers, and wise caretakers of the world around them. Through their knowledge of nature, their advancements in technology, and their rich cultural traditions, they laid the foundation for the indigenous civilizations that would follow. Their hunting techniques, tool-making skills, and spiritual beliefs were more than just aspects of daily life. They were part of a larger relationship with the natural world, one built on respect, balance, and sustainability. Even today, echoes of their traditions can be found in the stories, customs, and sacred sites of indigenous cultures across North America. As we uncover more about these ancient societies, we gain a deeper appreciation for their resilience, intelligence, and ingenuity. Their legacy is not just buried in the past. It continues to shape our understanding of human history, our relationship with nature, and the enduring spirit of those who first called this land home. You said,